Hello everyone, and welcome back to Turkish series stars. I'm so glad you're here, because today we're going to unpack a story that has kept the fandom whispering, wondering, and watching every little clue. We're diving into the most intimate secrets of Erkan Merrick and his ex, the luminous and talented Hazal Sabesai. Yes, we're going there. Into the relationship that once felt like a dream for so many fans, into the parts the cameras didn't show, the tensions they never put on the record, and where their lives stand now. Buckle up for a ride full of revelations, tenderness, and just the right amount of drama. And before we begin, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next exclusive. Let's get started. The relationship between Erkan Merrick and Hazal Sabesai became one of the most watched and talked about romances in the Turkish entertainment world, and it didn't take long for the fascination to spread beyond Turkey's borders. Both were young, both were rising fast, and both had an aura that drew people in. Their paths crossed while filming Adini Sinkoy, and from their very first scenes together, their on-screen chemistry was so compelling that it refused to stay confined to the script. Viewers fell head over heels for Omar and Zara and, bit by bit, began to wonder if the sparks were only for the cameras, or if something real was quietly growing when the director yelled cut. The whispers turned into daily speculation. Interviews together, smiles that felt like they carried secret meanings, those small, affectionate gestures caught by photographers during breaks, everything seemed to hint that Erkan and Hazal had built a bond beyond the studio gates. They tried to keep things private at first. They sidestepped questions, turned conversations back to their work, and protected what was theirs from a curious world. That's a reasonable choice when your names are suddenly everywhere and every move becomes a headline. But the hints grew louder. They were seen off-set. They were spotted in the same cafes, at the same gatherings, leaving events minutes apart. Fans were thrilled at the possibility that their favorite duo was a couple in real life, and the ship sailed with full sails. What began as a flicker of possibility soon dominated the entertainment buzz. The media, always hungry for a good love story, made a sport of connecting dots. They printed every alleged date. They magnified every look. They tracked every social media post that might line up with the other's schedule. And why wouldn't they? Erkan and Hazal seemed to be the perfect match. Poised and beautiful, talented and ambitious, with that raw, undeniable chemistry you can't manufacture. Their careers were taking off, and the narrative of a dream couple fit neatly with the romance audiences were already invested in. Fans imagined forever. They created montages and envisioned a future in which art and life held hands without a hitch. But fame, with its bright lights and tender bruises, tests even the strongest ties. Long shooting days, promotional runs, back-to-back scripts, the swirl of public opinion, these things weigh on a relationship, especially when it involves two people at the center of attention. Even as they seemed happy, even as their connection looked loving, rumors of tension began to creep in, the kinds of whispers that come from a clash of lifestyles that can't always be bridged by affection. Anonymous voices suggested there were differences in their pace, in their hopes, in the way each of them wanted to navigate a life that was increasingly public. Insiders murmured about personalities that met in a perfect spark on set but ran into friction once the cameras were off. Some hinted at dreams pulling them in different directions. For Hazal, who was flowering into a mainstream favorite and becoming a fixture at premieres and fashion events, the world was expanding. For Erkan, who has always projected a quietly grounded presence, privacy and a measured approach seemed more essential than ever. It's a familiar collision in the industry, one person leaning into the spotlight and the momentum it brings, the other careful to shield the parts of life that feel too precious to share. Speculation took off from there. Was distance a factor when schedules pulled them to opposite corners of the map? Were there disagreements about what to share with the public and what to keep sacred? Did the demands of fame make warm evenings and simple weekends rare enough to miss? Some sources said Erkan's calm, boundary-focused style sometimes felt at odds with the calendar of red carpets and the pressure to be everywhere at once. Others thought Hazal's dedication to new projects and her growing visibility brought with it a rhythm Erkan didn't always want to match. None of these whispers could be pinned down definitively, and yet they persisted, the way unconfirmed truths tend to do when a couple is under a magnifying glass. When the confirmation of their breakup finally arrived, it came in the quiet, careful way so many celebrity separations do, brief, dignified, and without theatrics. A few lines that said enough to end the guessing and not enough to invite more scrutiny. The reaction from fans was immediate and heartfelt. The dream of the couple so many had rooted for dimmed in a single afternoon, and timelines filled with edits, throwback clips, and bittersweet goodbyes to an era that, whether real or imagined, had felt like a fairy tale. The media raced to put the pieces together. They revisited old interviews, scoured earlier statements for clues, and dialed every industry contact who might offer a detail that hadn't been considered. And the same familiar themes emerged. Jealousy, incompatibility, and the unavoidable tug-of-war between busy lives. There were rumors, never substantiated, that attention from co-stars or fans might have rubbed the wrong way. Others insisted it was simpler, no villains, no scandal, just two people discovering that what had united them wasn't the same as what would sustain them in the long run. In her careful way, Hazal addressed the subject in a handful of interviews without ever really opening the door all the way. She hinted that the weight of expectations, the pressure to live up to an image, and the noise of constant attention made things harder than people might imagine. She spoke of work with pride and of boundaries with grace. Erkan, in turn, has acknowledged more than once that being watched at all times is a strange experience, that the glare of sudden attention can overwhelm even a steady personality, and that learning how to move through that glare is its own kind of education. Maybe, just maybe, and only they know for sure, the heart of the matter was that affection alone wasn't enough to reconcile two distinct visions for the future. What is certain is that both have kept rising. Hazal consolidated her standing with new roles that showed a broader range, stepping into genres that challenged her while keeping her warmth and magnetism intact. She became a favorite for campaigns and magazine features, a figure of effortless elegance who could carry a storyline and a brand with equal finesse. Meanwhile, Erkan took a path that felt true to him, choosing projects he could pour himself into, connecting with fans in ways that felt personal and respectful, and embracing opportunities that allowed him to expand without losing himself. If you look closely, you can see how both of them found a kind of peace in moving forward separately, in building lives that fit their own contours. And yet, their legacy as a duo hasn't faded. For many viewers, the bond they created as Omer and Zara remains a benchmark for TV romance, tender, intense, and written in the expressions that need no dialogue. That legacy isn't just about scenes or ratings. It's about the feeling that a story gave people at a specific moment in their lives, the way a look held across a room can make strangers feel like they've been seen. That's not something that disappears. It lingers as a soft echo in the minds of the people who fell in love with them on screen and rooted for them off it. But when we talk about intimate secrets, we often imagine scandal or betrayal. The deeper truth is usually smaller and more human. The conversations that were postponed until it was too late, the compromises that felt lopsided, the calendar pages that turned too quickly for two hearts to stay on the same line. Perhaps the biggest secret is that love, when lived under a spotlight, begins to answer to an audience, and sometimes two people choose to step away to protect themselves from that relentless chorus. It is messy to accept, but it is also dignified. In the end, we can guess at a handful of things. They had to make hard decisions. They likely felt the pull to maintain an image, the weight of fans' hopes, but also the obligation to chart their own courses. The expectation to stay together because a brand or a story benefits can be suffocating. The need to grow, to explore new chapters alone, can be liberating. None of that requires a villain. Sometimes it simply requires honesty of the kind that whispers in late-night kitchens and quiet car rides. We are not walking to the same place anymore. It's worth remembering that, though the public loves a good love story, the lives at the center belong to the people living them. Curiosity is natural. Analysis is inevitable. But the line between interest and intrusion is thin. The most closely guarded truths will remain theirs, and so they should. From the outside, we can read the signals, consider the choices, and still hold space for kindness. Respect for Erkan and Hazal's privacy doesn't diminish the magic they created, it honors it. So, where does that leave us? With a story that began like a fairy tale and ended like many real lives do, tenderly, quietly, and with gratitude for what was learned. The chemistry that started on the set of Adini Sen Koi spilled into real life and ignited conversation around the world. The pressures of visibility, the differences in temperament and pace, and the rhythms of two separate ambitions eventually led to a parting that felt inevitable in hindsight. Afterward, both of them continued to succeed, and perhaps even to breathe easier, as they poured their energy into their work and their own well-being. Maybe the most intimate secret is simply this: not all endings are failures. Some are thoughtful choices made by people who understand themselves well enough to let go. If you listen closely to their interviews and to the silence between them, you can hear a shared decision to move forward with grace. That is its own kind of love story. And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive into the private world of Erkan Merrick and Hazal Sabesai. I hope you felt the emotions, the questions, and the empathy woven through their journey. Now I want to hear from you. What moments from their story struck you the most? Did anything in our exploration change how you see their relationship? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I love reading your takes and talking them through. If you enjoyed this video and want more stories like it, don't forget to hit like, share it with friends who adore these stars, and subscribe to Turkish Series Stars so you never miss our next deep dive. Until then, take care and I'll see you in the next one.